In the opening days of 2025, President Donald Trump, fresh from a dramatic re-election, shocked the world by imposing a sweeping 70% tariff on Canadian goods. The list was staggering. Auto parts, lumber, aluminum, even crude oil, all suddenly hit with massive new costs. The announcement came with little warning, catching both allies and adversaries off guard. For decades, the US and Canada had built one of the world's closest trading relationships. But overnight, Trump's move threatened to unravel it. These weren't minor adjustments. They were economic cannonballs, sending shockwaves through global markets. Investors scrambled, stock tickers plunged, and the sense of stability that had defined North American trade for generations was suddenly gone. Factories braced for impact, and border checkpoints slowed to a crawl as uncertainty reigned. Trump called it a liberation day for American industry, declaring that Canada had long taken advantage of the US. He promised that these tariffs would bring jobs back home, restore American manufacturing, and put the interests of US workers first. His supporters cheered, waving flags and chanting slogans, convinced that a new era of prosperity was just beginning. The official White House line was clear. The tariffs would pressure Canada and Mexico to crack down on fentanyl and other deadly drugs entering the US. But experts, law enforcement officials, and even some within Trump's own party quickly dismissed this rationale, pointing out that most fentanyl came from elsewhere, and that the economic fallout would be severe. For Canada, the move was nothing short of seismic. Its economy, deeply intertwined with the US, faced immediate job losses, plant closures, and a wave of uncertainty. News anchors reported on the growing economic crisis, while workers and business owners wondered how they would survive the coming months. The tariffs weren't just another policy, they were a direct challenge to the very foundation of the US-Canada partnership. Decades of trust and cooperation were suddenly in question, and the sense of shared purpose that had defined the relationship was replaced by suspicion and anger. The Canadian government, already navigating political uncertainty, now faced an unprecedented crisis. Parliament was thrown into heated debate, the Prime Minister addressed the nation, and protests erupted outside government buildings as citizens demanded answers and action. The old rules of North American trade were gone, replaced by a new era of confrontation and unpredictability. Trade agreements that once seemed unbreakable were now in tatters, and the flow of goods across the continent slowed to a trickle. The stage was set for a historic showdown, one that would test the resolve, ingenuity, and endurance of both nations as they faced an uncertain future together. Trump's America First doctrine saw trade as a zero-sum game. America had lost for too long, he argued, and it was time to flip the script. In Trump's view, every trade deficit was a sign of weakness, a scoreboard showing America falling behind its competitors. He believed that the US had been taken advantage of by other countries, especially its closest trading partners, and that tough action was overdue. Tariffs became his weapon of choice to reverse that trend, a blunt instrument meant to shock the system and force a reckoning. By slapping tariffs on imports, Trump aimed to make foreign goods more expensive and less attractive to American consumers and businesses. The goal was clear: make Canadian imports so costly that companies would have no choice but to bring jobs and manufacturing back to the US heartland. Trump promised that factories would roar back to life and that American workers would once again be at the center of the nation's prosperity. But this wasn't just about economics, it was also political theater. Trump wanted to send a message to his base that he was willing to fight for American interests no matter who stood in the way, even if that meant targeting long-standing allies like Canada. The administration's justifications for the tariffs shifted over time. Sometimes it was about protecting American jobs. Other times it was about stopping the flow of fentanyl, but at its core, it was always about gaining leverage in negotiations. Most experts saw the fentanyl claim as a pretext, a convenient excuse to justify tough measures. The real aim, they argued, was to force Canada to the negotiating table and extract concessions on Trump's terms, not theirs. By targeting a close ally, Trump wanted to set a new precedent. America would dictate the rules of trade, not negotiate as equals. It was a bold, even risky move that signaled a shift in how the US approached its relationships. The tariffs sent shockwaves through the global economy, disrupting established trade flows and creating uncertainty for businesses and governments alike. They were designed to realign the global order in America's favor, even if it meant short-term pain. Trump hoped that the economic pain would be so severe that Canada would have no choice but to accept a new, one-sided relationship, one where American interest always came first. For Trump, disruption wasn't just a side effect, it was the point. He believed that only by shaking things up could he get results that previous presidents had failed to achieve. The world was watching closely, waiting to see if Canada would bend to the pressure, or stand its ground and fight back against America's new hardball tactics. Mid the chaos and uncertainty gripping the nation, as political tensions reached a fever pitch and the streets filled with anxious voices, a new figure emerged on the national stage. Canadians elected Mark Carney as Prime Minister in a snap April election, seeking a steady hand to guide them through turbulent times. The vote was a clear call for change, a collective decision to place trust in someone with a proven track record of leadership. Carney, a former central banker with a reputation for cool-headed decision-making, was the antithesis of Trump, calm, analytical, and unflappable. His background in global finance and crisis management set him apart from the bluster and unpredictability of his American counterpart. He promised stability and competence, not bombast, a leader who would stand firm without escalating the conflict. Canadians were drawn to his measured tone and his refusal to be baited by provocations. In his victory speech, Carney declared, "President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen." His words resonated deeply, offering reassurance and a sense of unity in a time of division. Before the election, Carney had already warned that the U.S. was no longer a reliable partner, signaling a new, clear-eyed approach to foreign policy. He was unafraid to speak hard truths, preparing Canadians for a future where they would need to rely on their own strength and resilience. Yet he was pragmatic, willing to negotiate but only on terms of mutual respect. Carney's diplomatic skills and willingness to listen made him a formidable presence on the world stage. Carney's experience managing crises gave Canadians confidence he could navigate the storm. He had steered economies through global downturns before, and now he was ready to do the same for his country. He refused to mirror Trump's style, instead offering steady, principled leadership. Carney's approach was to remain focused on solutions, not spectacle. Canadians rallied behind his calm resolve, finding hope in his unwavering commitment to the nation's well-being. Carney's approach, don't get rattled, don't get loud, just get results. He worked tirelessly behind the scenes, making tough decisions with clarity and purpose. For a nation in turmoil, it was exactly what they needed. A leader who could weather the storm and inspire confidence in the future. In May 2025, Carney traveled to Washington for a high-stakes meeting with Trump. The world braced for fireworks, but what unfolded was a masterclass in contrasts. Trump, ever the deal-maker, floated the idea of Canada becoming the 51st U.S. state, a proposal he'd never made so directly before. Carney didn't flinch. He replied, "Canada is not for sale. Some places are never for sale." The room fell silent. Trump, momentarily thrown, muttered, "Never say never." Carney's calm, direct response drew a line. Canada would not be bullied or bought. The tariffs remained, but Carney left with a moral victory. He'd stood his ground, unshaken. Commentators called it the centerpiece of Carney's quiet revolt. The meeting didn't end the crisis, but it defined the terms. This would be a battle of endurance, not bluster. Carney returned home without a deal, but with his country's pride intact. The world saw that Canada would not be intimidated. The tariff war hit home, igniting a wave of anti-American sentiment across Canada. National pride surged. Canadians united in defiance, from Parliament to hockey arenas, where fans booed the U.S. anthem. Boycotts of American products and travel took off, as citizens sent a clear message: enough is enough. In the U.S., Trump's base cheered, but many in border states and trade-dependent industries worried about lost jobs and rising costs. Canadian politicians, regardless of party, rallied behind Carney, presenting a united front. Canada hit back with targeted retaliatory tariffs, aiming to maximize political pain in key U.S. districts. The public's resolve was mirrored by its leaders. Canada would not be a passive victim. The crisis forged a rare national consensus: stand firm, whatever the cost. The tariffs weren't just headlines, they devastated families and businesses on both sides of the border. In Canada, auto parts factories shuttered, workers lost jobs, and communities faced economic ruin. American small businesses, from restaurants to construction firms, saw costs skyrocket as Canadian goods became unaffordable. Home prices rose, grocery bills climbed, and supply chains broke down. The pain was mutual. Canadian farmers lost markets, American consumers paid more. Even Trump's supporters felt the sting as local businesses struggled. some Republican lawmakers quietly pleaded for relief, caught between party loyalty and angry constituents. The tariffs, meant as a weapon, ended up hurting the very people they were supposed to protect. Carney's quiet revolt was a study in strategic calm. He refused to play Trump's game, no shouting matches, no ego battles. Instead, he projected stability, focusing on substance and unity. Carney kept his cool, denying Trump the chaos he thrived on. He rallied Canadians of all stripes, ensuring a unified response. Retaliatory tariffs were targeted, smart, and designed to inflict political pain without self-harm. Carney showed that strength isn't always loud. It's often measured, methodical, and principled. His approach gave Canadians pride and confidence in their leadership. The quiet revolt proved that dignity and resolve could stand up to bluster. Canada's sovereignty, Carney made clear, was non-negotiable. The 2025 tariff crisis and Carney's quiet revolt offer lasting lessons in leadership and national strength. Composure, not outrage, is a superpower, especially when facing provocation. Carney showed that true strength lies in clear principles and steady resolve, not volume. The tariffs, meant to divide, instead united Canadians in purpose and pride. National unity, not economic size, proved to be Canada's greatest resource. Carney's simple statement, "Canada is not for sale," became a rallying cry for sovereignty and dignity. The episode reminds us, defend your values with conviction, not anger. Real leadership inspires unity and stands firm, even under pressure. Canada's quiet defiance showed that a smaller nation can stand up to a larger one through intelligence and patience. In tough times, the strongest voice is often the calmest one.